I feel like he's a big deal, and we have something in common. Well, he was born in Norway, and I'm just Norwegian, so I'm proud of that. I'm 32%. So he was born on a farm in Norway, which I mean, a lot of the family also said that. While he was a teenager, he learned hypnosis from a magician in Europe, which that's awesome. I'm jealous. At the age of 25, he left Norway to go to USA to go to flight school, and he's logged more than 10,000 hours of flight time, which is awesome. You can fly that. By the way, he has a 5-page bio, which is more than anyone's given. I mean, you've written books and you've like applied to be a libertarian. Like you've tried to run for Congress in Pima County, which is awesome. You probably need a lot of that. I'm more interested in like what you do on YouTube and all the people you interview. And so his show on YouTube is called Broadcast Team Alpha, and you have a really cool mastermind meditation and manifestation program or classes that I feel like all of us could be a part of, and we would just learn so much. So I guess please come up here and tell us about I guess definitely your mastermind program. And it doesn't have to be now because I know we're going to talk about the moon and Mars, but definitely talk about that. I think right.
Hey, you don't need to clap. I haven't said anything yet. Oh gosh. Well, you mentioned broadcasting alpha. Let me first check. Can you hear me okay now? Can you hear me now? Which one is better? Closer? Okay. All right. Okay, that's good. Yeah, you mentioned broadcasting alpha. It's a show that is going out on 44 different platforms, 3 TV stations, Roku, and places in a horde of social media. And we're having a lot of fun with that. The 2 videos that I'm going to show you, the video documentaries here today, the first hour, was created by Nori Love, my co-host, and myself. And we went through a bunch of pictures that we found from stuff that is on the moon and stuff that is on Mars, including persons, NASA prints. Some of them are Russian. They come from the Russian Space Agency, and I think we are from the Chinese recent one, from the Chinese Space Agency from the moon. And I know some of them you probably may have seen, but there's going to be some that you haven't seen. And otherwise, I know every speech is supposed to start with a joke, right? I'm sorry, I just don't have one for you. Because my mind works like the browser on my computer. I got 72 windows open, 13 is frozen, and I have no clue where the music is coming from. So we'll just live with it. I've been doing radio and TV for 25 years, and I'm really comfortable on camera and on the mic. This is different. When I do shows on the internet, it's just me and the camera. Nothing else exists. Here we got about 50 people. That means that there's 100 eyeballs looking back at me. So this is different, but it's a fresh breath of air because this is more real. Yeah, it's real. And in the second hour here, I would love to hear from you also. If you had any experiences, strange experiences, if you have been abducted, I know there's at least 2 in here. So maybe we could do that because there is, it's one thing to listen to the speaker, but when it comes out of the audience, it's more real to the people listening. So I have 2 folders over here. I would like to send them around, and I want each one of you to take 1 copy of each. One of them is an FBI document that on their own stationery, they admit, yes, we have dead aliens that came out of a crashed flying saucer. Just take one and then pass it on and you go. And the other one is a drawing of a UFO detector that is so simple to make that even I did. And you can put it together for probably a few years ago. I priced it out and I came up to $21. Maybe I wouldn't cheap it as much as I did, but maybe $30 you could put one together really good. And it works. I have used that one in the past and I sold 3 ships. Because it doesn't give you a direction to it, but it does give you proximity. It is based on the system that if there is something moving through the air, having a gravity nullification system on it, then it will create ripples in the magnetic field. That ripple will affect the compass needle. When the compass needle moves just a little bit, if it touches a wire, it set off an electric circuit that goes through a bell, and the alarm goes off. So you can go outside with binoculars on the ground and you might find something. This is all for you guys. I also, I have no shame, so I brought a couple of my books there. So look at that. The one of them is spiritual science, higher conscious thinking, and how to access the universal consciousness. But teach you how to use your mind and use your knowledge, things would be impossible. And the other one is we're going to be in the business or would like to be. That is this one here. That is universal success principle and how ordinaries think. Anyway, does anybody in here remember it is so simple that it's very explanatory. From 1999 to 2006, I was hosting and producing 2 TV shows in Chicago. Anybody remember The Hidden Truth? No, okay, all right. That dates back a while. And we also want the Access 2000 once. And I would like to ask you one question before we run the videos, because this is going to be quite interesting. Is there anybody in here that would like to see UFOs every time you go outside? Okay, there's a way to do that. Get your hands on a fourth generation night vision goggles, because they can see higher up into the light spectrum than you do. If you get fourth generation night vision goggles, you go out at night, point them into the sky, and you will see the traffic jam. There are ships everywhere, triangles, roundholes, points of light moving around. And there was several years ago now that George Norrie was on a conference somewhere, and somebody had this kinds of goggles with him, and they walked out at night, and he was looking up there, and he saw all the ships, and it blew him away. So he did a whole show of this right after that. And also they used the night vision goggles over in Iraq during the murder expedition that your government went to. And they gave it to the soldiers, and they started complaining. They said, wait a minute, something's going on there, because when we put the goggles on, we see people, we see animals. We take them off, they're not there anymore. That explains why you can see stuff in the sky, because you look higher up into the light spectrum. So I think let's do the first video, and maybe you could start that out. It's your computer. I got mine recording it all here, so we. Okay. Can you hear?
We are not necessarily alone. We would love to know what you think of this. My name is Nori.
And I'm Aage.
And we're going to show you 47 NASA prints of artifacts, building, water tanks, spacecrafts, both flying, parked, and crashed on the moon. Many of them are clear photos, so there is no question as to what it is.
And here's the first picture. It's a 2-mile-long cigar-shaped mothership floating across the surface of the moon, throwing a shadow on the ground. I wrote to NASA and obtained a copy of this for myself. Right to NASA.
Here's a NASA print of a pyramid on the moon. In the upper middle of the picture, you can clearly see it. There are pyramids all over the world, so who are the pyramid builders? And you don't build pyramids in spacesuits, do you? Is there air on the moon?
There's more mysteries on the moon. That's a NASA print showing 2 structures, which looks like water tanks. It looks in the middle of the picture, you can see that right below the crater, and these structures are huge. They rise straight out of the ground and with a slightly curved top on them.
This is a copy of a NASA print that was retrieved from NASA in Houston. It looks highly suspicious. The crater looks too perfect and throws a tall shadow, and it's over a mile wide, perfectly circular. The structure to the left looks equally as suspicious.
And here's a copy of a NASA print in my possession. It has this strange feature in the picture on the right side. We can see the letter S. The size of it is unknown, but it is rather big, and it clearly looks like it is artificial, created.
This is a very large cigar-shaped spacecraft flying above Earth and in front of the moon. It was taken by Adamski in the 1950s.
There's a recent picture from the Chinese Space Agency. It shows a very large structure on the moon, and it definitely looks like a man-made structure with all the square corners in it.
This NASA print shows a clear structure of some kind on the moon. It could be small round spacecrafts parked inside a straight angled position. And when asked, NASA is mum, they simply say, we don't know, which seems to be a very common expression they use.
There's another NASA print of a crashed spacecraft sitting on the moon. And it is very clear, and it is blown up. So this is no question. This is the real thing.
This is a NASA print. Is it suspicious? A square structured building in the middle of the picture? Nature doesn't make things like this, except on small scales with quartz and crystalline forms. This structure is actually several hundred feet tall.
Have you ever heard the saying, the man in the moon? Well, here he is. Now, here's a magnified NASA picture from this strange figure, a humanoid-looking figure, walking on the moon without a spacesuit.
This is another NASA print of a tower on the moon. It's magnified from the original print and the size is unknown, but it's very clear. Nature does not make structures quite like this. So there is, again, one thing to say.
This NASA print is magnified from the original print, and it clearly shows structure like a monolith. The movie 2001, A Space Odyssey all over again. Maybe the people who made the movie knew something.
Here's a better magnified picture of what the Chinese released. We have a multi-layered square-cornered building. In the lower half, it looks like a row of smaller buildings, and to the right, it looks like streets or smaller buildings.
No offense.
It's very strange. Building-like structures in the bottom of this crater. It appears as the roof has collapsed, so it must be very old. And shouldn't we wonder who was in it at one time?
Here's an actual print from the Russian Space Agency taken by Luna 9. There's much controversy around this photo. Some think it's the remnants of a previous Russian mission to the moon. Some think it's part of Luna 9 that may have come loose in the landing. And if that was the case, how did Luna 9 move?
There's another NASA print from the moon. There's obviously buildings at the bottom of this crater. Then again, should we wonder who was in it or is in it?
Here's a NASA print with something that looks like a satellite dish. We don't think that that is naturally occurring. What do you think?
There's a NASA print from the moon. It looks like ruins of several city blocks. Okay, ruins of city blocks must have been people or entities living in there at one time. And NASA is telling us there is no atmosphere up there. Hello?
Here's another magnification of a NASA print. Can you see the cross-shaped building in it? It also looks as if it has lights in and around it.
Yeah, here's another picture of a strange artifact taken by the Russian probe Luna 9 on the moon. And it was released by the Russians. These pictures they show a different structure of what could be on the moon.
Don't tell me the moon is a dead rock in the sky. Here's a NASA print of a very old swastika-shaped building in the Schrödinger crater. It's more than a mile wide, and no, it's not a building that they showed in the movie Iron Sky. That one looked different. But people who made the movie may have gotten their motivation from this NASA print.
And here's an print taken by the lunar orbiter. They show a clear square structure of some kind on the ground. It looks like a square fortress or building of some type. Nature doesn't make these things.
There's a NASA print of something that should likely not be on the moon. A round building, a round flying disc. Either way, it doesn't look naturally occurring, but very man-made.
And here we have another print showing a spike coming out of the ground on the moon. It's 300 to 400 feet tall, and this is absolutely not a natural phenomenon. So who created it?
Here is a perfect square hole in a crater named Bancroft on the moon. It's about 70 by 50 meters. Do you think nature makes square holes like this? Have some fun and go and have a look at it yourself. You'll find it at 27 degrees, 54, 52.71 north, 6 degrees, 23, 23.8.
And here's another print showing something that was taken by the lunar orbiter in 1968. A 100-kilometer long, very long road on the moon. It's obviously engineered or trenched or something to that effect.
Here's a NASA print of a hole in the interior of the moon. The hole's about 400 meters, 1,200 feet wide. We can see a floor which looks as it may be 300 to 400 meters down. Should we wonder what comes in or goes out of this hole?
And here's another NASA print from the moon. It looks like pods or round buildings, and they look like they're lit up.
It actually looks like green vegetation on the moon. You have a look at it. And yes, they actually did make some color photos on the moon. What do you think?
There's a still photo taken from a movie footage taken by NASA on the moon. It shows a humanoid creature walking and sitting down on the moon. Now, this creature is too tall and too skinny to be a human, so what is it?
Here's a NASA picture taken by the lunar orbiter showing two pyramids on the moon. In fact, there are several in different locations, just like on Earth, Venus, and Mars.
And here is a magnified NASA print showing a humanoid walking on the moon again from a different angle than the last picture.
We know very little about this photo, but many credible sources claim it to be real and a very clear NASA photo of ruins of very old buildings or something on the moon. What do you think?
There's a NASA print of one of the bases on our moon, and of course NASA will not comment on this one either. Should we wonder who created this one? Us or them?
That's pretty compelling.
Yeah.
Here's a NASA photo of a print that was received from NASA. It looks like a small cigar-shaped ship traveling across the surface of the moon.
Here's a famous photo brought back from the moon by NASA. It's called the Chart. It is several miles tall and above the surface and appeared to be transparent material. Of course, NASA will not comment on this one either. And it can also be observed from Earth.
This is again a NASA photo, straight rows of something that looks like buildings and circles. Buildings and circles on the moon, they just don't look naturally occurring.
There's another NASA print from the moon. What do you see? Knowing there's an atmosphere on the moon similar to about 16,000 to 20,000 feet on Earth, this picture could actually make sense. I know, we're told there's no atmosphere up there, but I think this picture speaks for itself.
Here's a NASA print from our moon. This picture was taken by the lunar orbiter and showing this rock, or whatever it is, had traveled across the surface and in fact whirled uphill for a good part of the distance. And it's also seen in other photos. So again,
Do you see the tower on the moon? This tower is several thousand feet tall. Does that make sense that it would last that long on the surface of a planet that has so many meteor strikes over the millennia and thousands or millions of years?
this NASA print of a boulder or something else, the reason I said something else is that another photo of the same, we see that a big portion of the track is uphill. So
This is how it looks after NASA has smudged over important structures on the moon. We should wonder what they covered up, and of course, there is a way to unsmudge it.
there is a way to unsmudge a photo. Two methods can be used. One is very difficult. One is a chemical that only works on the original. The other is a form of an X-ray of the photo. These pictures came to us, but I'm not totally sure about this one. But there was something that NASA covered.
Here's another print from our moon. Could that be a long row of alien spacecraft sitting inside this crater? If you follow the red line, you can see them.
Can you see the cigar shape? Another ship that's on the moon, the one you saw earlier. Here, have a look at the size compared to other things we can relate to. Amazing.
Another NASA print here, taken by the lunar orbiter. This is from the other side of the moon. And there's a tower there. It is said to be nearly 5 miles tall. What is that? Who built it and why?
Wow. So there you have it. A lot to consider and think about. What do you think? This seems to give new meaning to the moon being made out of green cheese and the man moon. We would love to hear your thoughts. You can reach us at our website at broadcastteamalpha.com. You can email us broadcastteamalpha@gmail.com. And also just let us know if you'd like to receive updates and other programs. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think we'll go directly into the other video documentary. And after we're done, I want to just talk for about 5 minutes about these pictures because some of them could use a little qualification and explanation. Um,
Mars, a planet with legendary aspects. In ancient times, it was regarded as a god, the god of war. As mankind's technologies evolved into the late 19th and early 20th centuries, astronomy and scientists began to reveal more and more about this mysterious planetary neighbor that we call Mars. It seems, though, the more we've learned, the more mysteries and questions began to spin in the minds of many. In that same time, science fiction became mainstream. Martians and moonmen permeated movie theaters and radio of the early 1950s and on into present day. Our scientists have landed spacecraft and robots on the surface, and roving robots explore the landscape of what we are told is a lifeless desert planet with little going on except predictable geology that says little else. But have we really been given the whole story about Mars, or has something bigger been going on for quite some time? Has there been an intelligent race on this planet? Photos from the various missions, orbiters, and scientific research have exposed what may well be evidence of previous civilization, as well as specific photos that leave no room for doubt about the UFOs on Mars, along with huge number of photographs of things that do not seem to be just rocks. Herewith are some photographs that raise more questions than answers. And yes, we do know about the phenomenon of pareidolia. It's interesting, though, to note that in the Wikipedia reference to pareidolia, the first example given is that of the face on Mars. Seemingly, maybe, so to discredit the face on Mars by this example of pareidolia. We're going to show you 20 pictures of Mars for you to explore. If you'd like to look at a picture more closely, just click on the video, it will pause, and then click on it again to restart the presentation. The images are NASA prints, Google Mars pictures, and from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. We invite you to decide for yourself about the findings and happenings on Mars, and whether you think that in this big universe, whether we're alone or not.
This first NASA print is from the surface of Mars. It shows a clear form of vegetation. These trees, if you like, can be 100 to 150 feet tall. And that's about 30 to 45 meters tall. That is taller than most trees in America or anywhere in the world.
This NASA picture appears to be from the raw download sent by the Curiosity rover before anything was done to it. Can you see him? There's this little alien standing about 18 to 20 feet away from the rover. Life on Mars? I don't know. It may appear so.
Again, a NASA print, and this time it is a levitating rock on Mars. You must presume conditions are different on other planets.
But what if someone threw a rock in front of the camera, or the ground were magnetized and the rock is a piece of metal or something similar that is being repelled by that magnetism? Okay, I'm just thinking here.
Is this a picture of Stonehenge? Stonehenge on Mars? It looks like a mound with a sort of stone circle on top of it. I mean, theoretically, nature could make something like this, but I don't know, very unlikely. We can only wonder.
And here's a NASA print clearly showing a building of some sort on Mars. It appears to be made from metal. It is definitely not rock. And I do not think we created this one. Someone else did, and not from Earth. This is a picture from the research on Mars Moon Space Photo Zoom. They do great research. Go and visit them.
And here's a NASA print showing something that looks like a round metallic building on Mars. It's totally different than all of its surroundings. Could it be a house that has 2 rooms?
Here's another picture from the Gigapan NASA prints of miles and miles of Martian terrain. And NASA did not study them very well. When the researchers started rolling up the pictures, they find strange stuff in it. Like there was a terrible disaster on Mars. And like we see here, it looks like wheels on an axle.
This NASA picture was sent back from Mars by the Curiosity rover. To us, it looks like a woman in a long flowing dress standing on the edge of a ledge. What do you think?
Nothing sinister here, just a wonderful, colorful picture of sand dunes on Mars. The picture was taken by the Mars orbiter and sent back to Earth, and it was extracted from the download stream from Mars and discovered by the University of Arizona Library.
This is a very unique blow up from NASA Gigapan print from Mars. In the top left box, you can see 2 parallel lines looking perfectly like tire tracks, wheel tracks. From the clarity of it, we estimate that the tracks are a half mile or less from the rover which took the picture.
Here's the NASA print of sand dunes on Mars, but there is more. In the upper left, you see 3 distinct dams, and in the middle, it could be a mining operation with lines and tire tracks or roads. On the lower sand dune, it looks like there are drilling towers like we use for oil drilling on Earth. Wow, what do you think?
This picture is to the credit of NASA Jet Propulsion Lab, JPL, and it was found by the people at Cal Tech University and Martian Genesis. They thought it was important enough to publish it separately. Can you see the humanoid standing in the lower center? And up to the left, there's something that looks like it could be an entrance to a house.
Here's a NASA print showing some strange tracks. It starts in nowhere and moves along and ends in nowhere.
It is not following the laws of gravity either. Who made these tracks, or what made these tracks? And they suddenly disappeared.
So this is strange. It's not rock. It's a NASA print taken by the Curiosity rover Mastcam of something that looks like dried out, cut down leaves or branches, if you will, but dried up organic material for sure.
We showed you the man in the moon pictures. Is this the man on Mars? This is another blow up of the NASA Gigapan pictures from Mars. Can you see the man inside the circle standing there leaning up against the big rock?
Like the Marlboro Man on Mars. Here's another NASA print showing NASA is not quite as truthful with us as we would like them to be. They say there's no water on Mars anywhere, but I think this picture may say something different. Here's a string of lakes in a riverbed, and if you look on the edge, you can even see the gradation of the color of the water.
Here's a clear picture taken from NASA prints sent back to Earth by the orbiter. No doubt here, this is a three-sided pyramid. The question is it natural? I doubt it. I've never seen nature creating anything like this before, anywhere.
Here's another NASA print from the courtesy of the exclusive Mars images and their research in the files of NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory, as well as Caltech University. This appears to show a humanoid figure sitting on a rock or something facing away from us. This picture also comes out of the Gigapan pictures from Mars. What do you think?
This is a very clear NASA print of trees or vegetation on Mars. The source of the photo is NASA JPL, and you have the Mars longitude and latitude at the top of the picture. So do your own research. Start with Google Mars.
And this is a NASA print of the D&M pyramid on Mars in the Cydonia area. It must be very old, and the sand is blown up against it. Richard Hoagland did a lot of research on this one and have found it to be absolutely genuine, an old pyramid. So there you have it. We have more pictures of Mars coming shortly, but we just want to invite you to let us know what you make of all this. You can contact us on broadcastteamalpha.com. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Be sure to click the bell subscription button. This will notify you when new shows and new videos are uploaded. And as always, we thank you for being with us.
Okay. I hope that you took something home in the back of your head from this tonight and today. And what you can do is to go to the internet, find a map of the moon. You can buy those things, and they're really big ones. I've seen more available for about, I mean, like 6 feet across, and they got every crater you can think on their name. Find the Schrodinger crater. And look at it. It is, you can see the roughness on it. There is one spot. Doesn't have any roughness. That's where you find the swastika. Now, there's Nori mentioned that there's 2 ways to smudge pictures that NASA have smudged out. And it is kind of, it's much better if you have the original. But there is something that I heard that I'm gonna tell you. I have not tried it. I don't know if it works, but I'm gonna say it anyway. And if somebody want to experiment, you can take the picture of what we have here. You can find it on our YouTube channel. That's a better picture than what you are getting from this. Blow it up a little bit and take infrared light and put on the picture. And then take a picture of that picture. I talked to a guy, he works at a high school in New York, and he's experimenting with these kinds of things. And he said that if you do that, you will not see the whole thing, but you can see the shading of what is covered up. So if somebody want to experiment and see if you can find out, then that would great. Let me know too, because I have not done it. I don't have any infrared light, so that's probably where I go short. And when we think about this, is what we can see. The UFOs that come here with nuts and bolts craft, they're in the physicality with us. But then we have on the CIA website, there is this document that is called the Smoking Gun document. And that is where they explain that yes, there are UFOs, we're talking to them, but they're mostly interdimensional. And you can probably find that if you go into the reading room. I think it's a good place to start looking for it. Now, think of it this way. We can only see less than 1% of the light spectrum. Just this little sliver. What do you think happens in the other 99% in higher vibrations and lower vibrations? What do you think is in there? Think about that. There's people there. There's entities there. A lot of the ships that decloak and they show up here, they come from some of those other vibrations. So that's why you should get your hands on a 4th generation night vision goggles. You're going to see some of them. And in those 99%, there are people, there are entities, there are spiritual beings, light beings. And I have no idea how far up the line it goes. There's all kinds of people out there saying they think they know. If you haven't been there, I don't know what you know. So just think about that. Another thing that we want to really know something about, and that is the disclosure. We can see that a lot of new information is coming out now. Whistleblowers are coming out by the horde, and they are talking very much the same story, but different details. Now, the thing about it is that disclosure has already happened. It's just that nobody talks about it. I don't know if you heard, I may have mentioned it, but there is a story coming out of Russia. The president at the time, about 8 years ago or so, or maybe 6, Medvedev, he was interviewed. And after the interview, the lady at the TV station, she asked him, "What can you tell us about UFOs and extraterrestrials?" Medvedev thought the camera was off, but it wasn't. And he said, "Oh yeah." He says, "When we take office," he says, "we get this dossier of the file, and they explain to us," he says, "about the UFOs. They're here, the extraterrestrials are here, but we can't talk about it because they tell us that we could have panic." Well, the TV station thought it was such a good story. They ran the whole daggone thing on live TV in Moscow. The Russians know. The Russian Navy released pretty much all the UFOs, pictures, and videos. Nobody talks about it. Why? So don't tell me you don't speak Russian. That's not a good excuse. Teachers don't need language. You can also use Google Translate. So go to RT. Russia Today news, internet newspaper, and the regular newspaper. Google it and go into the picture gallery. You're going to have a ball. They have some of that. And I guess we're getting close. Should we take a break or whatever you think is right now? Yeah, that'll be fine. We can break now and then we come back.
So I guess break time, and then we're gonna do the raffle after the break, and there's still time to get tickets. And all the stickers up there are $1 today. And free cookies and free water. And Augie has books for sale. We're going to do the raffle in 2 minutes, maybe 1 minute. They're going ready. Is everyone ready to do the raffle? The raffle is happening. All right, we're going to do the raffle, and then we have 3 prizes for the raffle, and then first place to pick what they want, and second and third, and that's how that's going to go. So we have a book by Aage, we have a green laser pointer that has the word MUFON on it, and then we have this book that was just given to me today. It says To Catch a Flying Star, and it was published in 1989, which I guess is before they were really starting to, or copyrighted in 1989. So it might have some older information in there, which is fun. Pick them up. All right. 163168. Really? You get a pick. You're first. Yeah. All right. Thank you. All right. Second place. 163186. Woohoo! You got 2 books to pick.
You need the ticket?
All right, our final ticket. 160. The last 3. Woohoo! You get? Oh, I get the book. Thank you guys for trying. Aage, did you want to go to lunch afterwards? And then did you have a preference? It could be anywhere. Usually I have been going to Brother Ferb and John's barbecue over there. And there's one over Oak Narrow. Cool. All right, we're going to resume our meeting, and we're going to try to go to Brother John's Beer Bourbon Barbecue after this. Are there sports tonight? Anyone know?
Probably not. I mean, you made out with them.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Here you go. Either.
I think it works still. Yep. Hey. All right. Yeah, I just stopped on disclosure because everybody is screaming for it. We want it. I want to tell you about something that actually NASA have done, and that is that there was a guy named Joseph F. Blueberich. He's a leading engineer for NASA, and he took 18 months to study all the pictures of activity on the moon. Moving shadows over the ground, moving ships, light moving across, explosions, and buildings in pictures. It took 18 months to get through all that, and then he requested a bunch of stuff from the Russian Space Agency. And they sent him boxes and boxes of pictures and material for him to go through on the condition that he shared it with them, and he did. And he made a statement, and a lot of people don't know about this, but I want to quote him. And it said, "The moon and Earth are and have been visited on a regular basis by extraterrestrial beings." That was disclosure. So then, why is nobody talking about it? I do, but I don't hear much about that. So now, we know why disclosure has not come from the White House. First of all, there's nobody in there. For the second, that they're too stupid to figure out what to say. But they're covering up for the industry, for oil companies and others that has interest in that area. But it's coming now. It is coming. And there are people from the inside that's saying they think it could be even as early as this year. A statement from the government outside of NASA is saying something. So we'll see. We'll see if that happens. I know it's pretty close. I did a lot of research on the moon when I did those videos, and I ran into some papers from India where they wrote about the fact that there were two moons. One was this one we see now, and there was another one slightly smaller. It was blue in color. What happened to it? If it was there and then went away, what happened to it? Maybe it was flown away because that was a spaceship too, just like this one. Maybe they needed it somewhere else. And there's cramps in orbit around the moon that we can see with strong telescopes. I have a telescope that magnifies 300 times. And it's a good little telescope. It's kind of difficult to keep steady when you get those magnifications. If it's blowing a little bit, then it moves around. But there is a guy in Canada, and some of you may know of him. It's Bruce Schwartz. Go to YouTube. Go to YouTube and search for Bruce Sees All. He has some of the best YouTube videos on the moon that I've ever seen. He's got a telescope that is so big I can crawl inside of it. And he He does things on YouTube pretty much every day. And he's got videos, magnified videos of cities. You cannot see the small windows and stuff on the buildings because they don't look like they have any. But there is, you can see city streets. You can see buildings, square corners. You can see ships. And that is from, not from NASA, from anybody. That's a private guy. So, and also there is one place on one video I saw, he saw a huge ship that moved across the surface of the moon. And I looked at the curvature of it and the size of that ship. That ship was thousands of miles long. It's a cigar. You can find all those videos on his YouTube channel. On Bruce Seeds All. And I see somebody this morning here, they got paper and a pen. If you have paper, I got pens, so if you're missing it, you can borrow one. And there is a government document issued by NASA that used to be classified, but it no longer is. And that is, it's called Chronological Catalog of Lunar Events. Yeah. Huh? Yeah. Chronological Catalog of Lunar Events. They reviewed all the writings and the pictures that may be possible all the way dating back to 300 years ago when they invented the telescope. And they see things moving around up there. They see shadows, they see buildings, they see light explosions, there's stuff going on the moon, lots of activity. And I think if you go to Google that, it's been put up. You can read it, it's free. You know, kind of fun if you wrote to NASA and have them send you a copy of it so you get first-hand information. But the Chronological Catalog of Lunar Events. That is a really, there's about 180, just 70, something like that, different accounts of activities on the moon that NASA did and then classified it. It dates back to about the late 70s, I think. And it was classified for 20 years. And, after 20 years, it automatically is declassified. At this time, they didn't reclassify it. In order to reclassify something, you're going to change the material some. And they didn't. So you can have it now. If anybody else, I would love to see hands that think the moon is hollow. There's people here that have done a little research, I see that. And that's, I'm wondering how could it be hollow? Well, let's look at the moon itself. There is more scientific explanation explaining why the moon isn't there than it is what you can come up with that makes it be there. If you look at the moon, we know how heavy, we know how big it is. And we have samples of the rock, so we know how heavy it is. We know how big Earth is. We know how much gravity it puts on. We know the gravitational forces of the moon. We know how fast the moon is going around Earth. And we know the distance. if you feed all that information into a computer, it doesn't come out. The moon can't be there. It's impossible. Too big, too close, and moving too fast. It can't be there. It's impossible. But if the moon was hollow, it would not have the weight. It would not have the mass so to create the gravity grid. They lied to us about the gravity, by the way. Now, if the moon was 2/3 further out, if it was solid, it could hold an orbit. So why isn't it out there instead of where it is? It has to be because it is hollow. There is no other explanation. So I think that that's something that we haven't been told much about this. Because NASA don't talk much. They, that's a different show. They find materials on the moon. They found materials like why? We know what glass is. It's not a natural material. It's an alloy. How can that be on the surface of the moon? Somebody created it. As well as there is radioactive material, Neptunium-237 and uranium-236 found on the moon. Those are also created substances. They're not natural. Same thing as on Mars, there's radioactive material there that can only be after an atomic explosion. So there's been something involved in a nuclear event both on Mars and on the moon. NASA don't talk about that much either. So, and also in 1969, I think it was on Apollo 11, when they were leaving, they crashed the capsule. The lander, they crashed it back on the surface, and the moon was ringing like a bell for several hours afterwards. So, if it is a solid sphere, it wouldn't have an echo or ring like it did, just like you bang on a bell. That can sing for a long time too. And the moon did the same thing, so it has to be hollow, otherwise it wouldn't do that. And another thing is that from the material that we got back from the moon, when they analyze it, they find that the moon is about 500 million years older than Earth. That tells me that the moon was not even created in the same cloud of dust that created our solar system. It had to come from outside of our solar system, which had from a place where there were 500 million years, actually 400 million or something. So it is not from this solar system at all. And now that's starting to make sense to me if you look at being hollowed out. That's not that easy to do this. It's superior technology involved here. Also, we see that all the craters have the same depth to them. I don't care how big they are, they're always the same depth. That also tells me underneath that surface of rock and dust that is accumulated from about 4.5, 5 billion years, there's several hundred feet of dust there that's accumulated during that time. There's a hard surface. None of the craters go down more than a few hundred feet. It's very shallow. I think it's close to 800, 900 feet or something like that. So it's a hard surface underneath. And according to the Russians, they say that the moon has, underneath the dirt, it has an iron surface. They found the signatures of Fe, the iron coming back. So iron, that makes it a spaceship. And I think people are coming around to think that way. And another thing, the curiosity is that we're talking about the orbit on it. The diameter of the moon is 400 times smaller than the sun. And then the distance from Earth is 1/400th of the sun. That's why we have a perfect eclipse. The moon, when it moves in front of the sun, then actually the moon is exactly the same size as the sun. And the reason that we have this ring around it is because light bends. So it travels around a little bit around the surface. Otherwise, it would be just covering it up perfectly for just a short moment. In order for it to have the orbit that it has, with a perfect circle like it is, there are scientists that is looking at that and they say that is 1 in several million that it should be able to do that, coming in, just drifting through space. So there's an intelligence that behaves there. And that distance is quite interesting because it stays the same. And also it does not rotate. The same side is always through us, and that is because the hollowed out moon has evidently more mass on one side than it does on the other one, and since it is going around the Earth, the centrifugal force would move the side that has more mass away from us, so we always see the same side. And in fact, the Russian scientists talked about that too. They found entrances, and you saw one of the pictures here with a hole going into the moon. There's another one that I found later, and that one is smaller. So, but there are several entrances into the interior. So we wonder what's in there. And the Russians, they're pretty open about a lot of things. Famous the people in South America, they talk about UFOs being fact. They talk about extraterrestrials visiting. And there's no big deal. They take it as a fact. Many of the people down there. In 1970, Sputnik magazine in Russia, there were 2 Russian scientists. They were Mikhail Vasin and Alexander Sherbakov. They quoted, and I'm going to quote them. They said the moon is of extraterrestrial origin and was placed there a long time ago, and is not natural. These two scientists worked for the Russian Space Agency. So I think we've been happy. But also, just go on the internet and find a map of the moon and go to the Schrodinger crater. And you can write to NASA and have them send you a picture of the Schrodinger crater. They will do that. They will send you the print. Get a print because that is, let's see, probably the third generation from the original. And then you can try that experiment with the infrared light and take a picture of it and see what happens. But you can see in one area there is perfect smooth. And in other areas there's all kinds of rocks and a rough surface. And that is suspicious to me. Because obviously when they found the swastika, they had to do away with that one. And now the second video was about Mars. And have you noticed now that the pictures coming back from Mars is not brown anymore? They quit using the brown filter because they lied to you from the very first day. They say, oh, it's just a dead desert planet and it's brown, everything is brown. But the funny part of it, the sky was brown too, but it's not anymore. When you ask them about that, they say, oh, well, we don't know. They move their lips, right? The reason that the ground has some brown color to it is much like Sedona here in Arizona. It's got a lot of iron oxide in places, but not everywhere. And you also notice that there's blue sky now on Mars. The pictures coming back now have blue skies. Question, how do we get blue skies? Oxygen and moisture. It may not be all that much moisture, but some. There is oxygen on Mars too. Not as much as here possibly. Same thing is on the moon. The moon has oxygen. There's an atmosphere equivalent to about 16 to maybe 18 to 20,000 feet of altitude here. I'm a pilot. I tested myself all the way up to 24,000 feet. I came back on a flight one time, and there was me and a co-pilot. So I told him that I wanted to turn off the oxygen. So he put the oxygen mask on, and there were just the two of us in the airplane. So we shut off the pressurization, and it slowly went down to right about, I think it was 20 or 20,000, 20,000. And it was difficult to breathe. But it wasn't impossible. We could still breathe. We just had to breathe deeper. And in order to get the same amount of oxygen, we had to breathe deeper. And at the time, I was not used to it. So, I got I didn't really, but they say that if you don't have oxygen, you just don't care anymore. And I could feel that start coming on. So I I put the mask on eventually too, and then we turn on the pressurization again, and then we just went back. And I could perfectly well exist at 24,000 feet. If you get used to that, you can live there. And think about the people in Himalaya. There are monasteries at 18,000 feet, and there's people there. They live fine because they're used to it. If there is 16 to 18,000 feet of pressurized altitude, Earth altitude on the moon, people can live there. And all of this is going to come out. And then we're going to get some big nails and a hammer and just nail all those people to the wall that it's been lied to us for all these years. I'll be first one in that row. And another thing that you may want to do, go ahead and Google Project Red Sun. That was a combined mission between the Russians and the Americans going to Mars in the late 1960s. There is a movie, a short movie footage, and you may have seen that one. When they entered orbit on Mars, there's dialogue in the Russian accent as well as the American. They were sitting there looking at the surface. There was a little short movie, video footage. Actually, it was movie footage back then that they talked about entering orbit on Mars. And when you start reading about the Project Red Sun, it gets very interesting because that's they went there in what they call ISV Columbus was the name of the craft. ISV Columbus. And then we're finding out from many now, the super soldiers coming back and saying we have bases out there. And there are other people coming out that is not super soldiers, but they have information from NASA. They're coming out and saying, yeah, we've been on Mars for decades. We've been on the moon for decades. The Nazi Germans went to the moon in about 1942 in a Haunted 2 craft, which they made. The Haunted, the Germans, they made the flying disc. They used the first two. They had the red mercury as the propulsion system energy, and in the later ones they used D2O, like deuterium. That's radioactive water. And they went to the moon in the Honolulu 2, and they flew around it, they mapped it, and they found that video, they found that building looking like a swastika. They went there, and they fell in love with it, and they came back, and they started funneling supplies and material up to the moon, and they started rebuilding some of that swastika. And that is where they have their base now. Or one of them, there may be more than one. Maybe more than one. Because there's a lot of other races, and there's a lot of extraterrestrials of different forms and shapes, and they're out there. And there are people that have talked about that. I had contacts if there are astral travelers You can go there. They, for some reason, they have a guarding system. They don't like you there, so they send you back. But you can get a look at the building to prove that it is there. After travel is pretty simple to learn. In fact, I'll teach you how to do it in that book over there. Simple. I said simple, not easy, because there's a little bit of practice. And there's another thing, as you could see on that video. There's this little guy that was standing there leaning up against a rock. We don't know how tall he was, but he could be a little more than about a foot long. That sounds ridiculous. Really short guy. But then, does anybody remember a few years ago, there was this archaeologist that came out with a find that he did in Antarctica. They found this fossilized human skeleton inside of a rock. Perfect human skeleton, 11 inches long in one of them and 12 inches long in another one. There were two of them. This was written up in archaeology journals, and then kind of went quiet. Does anybody remember reading that or hearing about it? Yeah, I thought so. And it's there. And if they were here, 1 foot tall, here on Earth millions of years ago, why should they not be on another planet? It could very well be that. And there is one more thing that I would like to mention, maybe a little less pleasant, and that is something that it's a NASA operation called Project Blue Beam. Anybody familiar with this? Yeah. Project Blue Beam is that project has been around since the late 1960s or 70s or so. NASA, the director, Werner von Braun, who talked about it. That is the fake alien invasion. They didn't have the technology to do it back then, but they do now. That is, one day you wake up, you go outside and you see the sky is full of ships. Some of them bigger, some smaller, probably. A lot of them around UFOs. And they're just sitting there, and in between there may be some real ones shooting at things on the ground to create fear for the people. So the people will run to the government and say, please protect us. Join with all other nations so we can fight the aliens. So they are setting up this one world government where everything is locked down tyranny everywhere. They have worked out the plans for it, but they also know that the Christians are some of the last people that probably would buy into this. But they have figured a good one for that too, because they have holographic images of the ships. But they're also going to have Jesus coming back in the sky as a holographic image, and they're using an old technology called voice to skull. They're beaming microwaves to your head, and you can hear the voice of somebody talking. Whatever that voice is telling you, it's going to say something like, do as the government tell you, because so they can protect you. If you're in Saudi Arabia, you can care less about Jesus, so then they're going to have Muhammad up there. They have it all worked out. And according to my friend here in Tucson, John D'Souza, you know, the ex-man, the ex-FBI retired, he says, what I hear from behind the curtain, he says, this program, the fake alien invasion is imminent. So when I personally, now this is the program, but I personally think that there's so much information on this out right now that I'm not so sure if they will be able to pull it off. I have not seen it happen, so I'm just talking about, yeah. Yeah, I think you're onto something there because what we're seeing happening now, all the new information coming out, the whistleblowers and everything, we are being led down the primrose path. This is a perfect program worked out by the Gestapo, I mean the government. And they are leading us down there to this. What we're seeing right now is the program that leads you into the fake alien invasion. Because everywhere in government now says, oh, this is bad. The aliens are bad. How do they know? Yeah, well, they talk to some of them. If the aliens are talking to our government, I mean, our government is in bed with the best skulls buckets in the world, so they have to be bad. But on the other hand, there are good ones out there that is also looking out for us. So I don't think that it's going to be fulfilled, that program. But they are trying to scare us, absolutely. And what I'm concerned, good luck with that, because there are some of us that knows more, and it's not going to work. But I wanted to see, is there anybody in here that has had an abduction? You have? Would you would you just take 2 minutes and talk about it? Yeah. Wait, you got a microphone coming.
Most of the abductions,
Sorry.
most of the abductions happened years ago, and I was always taken up into a craft, and I found out later they would be looking at my mouth, and sometimes I would be in a circular stirrup situation with a lot of other people who were having hybrid babies. And I got that confirmed by one of the experts and several of them around that had been getting impregnated with alien hybrids. And I never saw them. I never know what they look like. I never had any contact with them consciously that I can remember. So after I found out from some experts what was going on, I said, no more babies, and everything stopped. I never had any kind of horrible experience with aliens. I've been taken out in space and told that I had to breathe through a certain type of tubing that I didn't want. And I always seemed to get shot up with light in my head. You could feel it when it came back into your body. You could feel the remnants of the light in your head. And anyway, lately I've had more encounters, which as far as I know, I haven't been abducted and taken away, but I might be going willingly. Might be going willingly and, recently has one where I saw them coming at me at 3:30 in the afternoon. With two headlights in the front. And it had like a square front with a body in the back and it was moving like this. And I thought at first maybe it was a helicopter, but helicopters don't fit that description. Anyway, it went up, 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 up so far that it disappeared. I did decide I could take a picture of it. And I got the square front, but the rest of it was just like a remnant. The light was in the back. And anyway, several things were going on at this time. There was the two men and woman that got shot down in Texas in the military crash. And was going on at the same time. So there's some interplay of what I might have been seeing. But helicopters don't fly with two headlights in the front in the daytime. And I've seen a picture of something that it could explain it, which is a drone, a big drone, military drone that they're going to send to another planet. And it has a square front with two headlights in it. So I don't know if I was seeing an experimental model.
No, sometimes we don't really know what we see because we may not. We could be manipulated in what we see also.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that
Yeah.
story. That was
Very
good. Yeah, I guess we're down to the end here. Huh? I want to say just one thing about those books I have up there. If you're in business or like to be in business or just have a smooth running family, that one book about the universal success principles and billionaires think is looking at. This is from my association with 3 different billionaires that I have. It's a lot of stuff people don't know about that makes life simpler and more prosperous. And the other one I teach how to use the mighty ways that you normally would think would be impossible, including astral travel, as well as we talk about photographic memory and time travel and much more. So anyway, have a look. Are we towards the end? Yeah, questions? Yeah, okay. Uh, uh, 20 for the one on the spiritual science and 15 for the other one. Huh? Yeah, yeah. Any good question? Yeah. Yes. Uh-huh. Uh, uh, uh,
The movie itself is about the conflict and has it any time.
yeah, it was interesting. It was quite far out there too. There is another one too that relates to the swastika. That is another movie called Iron Sky. And they showed a swastika building on the moon, but it was much bigger and not as well, it was wider at least. I'm not so sure if it was all that bigger. But my question is, how did they come up with the idea to make a movie like that? It was so out there, just make a movie about that. There's Nazis on the moon and having a building looking like a swastika, unless maybe they saw the NASA print, gave them a good idea. Yes. Yeah, it's complicated in these waters. Karma is something that everybody has said that you can't get out of that one, but yes, you can. There's a way. You want to start interacting with a unified field and everything in there, you learn how to communicate. I teach you how to do that in that book. Their karma is not locked in stone. It can be altered, redesigned, or done away with. Okay. I'm not sure.
I have a question. Have you met, do you know of any other great remote viewers like Tom Dongo?
Remote viewers?
Yeah.
Not really, but I know there are people doing it, and there's quite a few of them on YouTube that is doing videos about stuff like that. There is one guy that is in my mastermind group. He deals with he's an investigator for the MUFON in St. Louis. Christopher. He teaches it. And I don't know, I haven't seen his course or anything. Remote viewing is a very valid, there's some science behind that. It works. I personally think it's probably just as easy or more interesting to actually go over here as an astral travel. You can get too close up. There are places you really shouldn't or can't go, like into the White House. They'll stop you. They have their own people guarding the place. Same thing about certain places on the moon. They will not let you. If someone learn how to do this, you can find yourself a ship. This is something that it gets really deep, and I wasn't even going to talk about it, but you can learn how to do it. And you will find extraterrestrial ships. You can get on it. You can have a look. So, yeah. Time. Yeah. You know, John D'Souza says it's imminent. So I don't know if they're going to be able to pull it off. They better do it now because there's a lot more information coming up. As people are waking up by the hordes. And when you talk about how can they create holographic images like that with a whole sky full of it, they gave us a sample. Yeah.
So,
Oh,
but I mean, aside from you have done this, like, all this and sometimes, some of them are not. And then, like you said, you get this infrared or night vision model, and you can thousands of moving all that. So people are starting to be more aware, which will allow us to have contact without the connection.
yeah.
So that's where I kind of figure out, if we take a tracker and use that, then it's actually a direct communication. Without using this.
Yeah, and we don't really know how it could come about. But on the other hand, is that it doesn't really matter how much you know how well educated or awake you are to that this is what's really going on. They have the capability of doing that. If you find a ship in between some of those holographic images, that's the real thing, and that just blow up a small town somewhere, that could be very convincing. And those people that know, they still might be running to the government and say, please protect me. So they can be very convincing. And I don't know if they're going to be able to do it, but I want to listen to John D'Souza. He's a sharp guy.
These would be a really good, the picture that's amazing thing is somewhere in the symbol of task, and sometimes that's human. It can be an effective way to share truth and bust up
Yeah,
the
no, it could be. Yeah.
One question that I wanted to share. The chapter, the different chapters, and become real still, you can maybe see into the invisible realm things moving in and out of your chakras. Or into the, you can see them, you can see the spirit. Far into the light shining on your head. Now, like you're taking a rest, and also on different chakras, and you can see things in the spirit and out of your chakras. Wow. If you need to.
Yeah.
You can buy it. You can buy it with infrared, it also makes black. Yeah, look online, they're all.
There are ways to protect ourselves that way too. The best way I know how to do is to be able to control the timeline. You design your future the way you want it before you have to live it. And in that book, again, I'll show you how to do that. I put together a mastermind group with phenomenal people in it. And we create out of seemingly nothing sometimes. It just shows up. And especially healing for people that has an illness, there has been spontaneous stuff happening right there on the meeting, or in a day or so after they find out, wait a minute, I don't want that anymore, And economic windfalls, because we design it into our future the way we visualize it, we intend it, we feel it, we love it into existence. This is how the unified field communicate with you. And religion don't teach you. Government don't teach you. We do. And it's simple. If you are on the YouTube, start watching the videos of Greg Brady or the videos that I do on broadcastingalpha.com. And what Nora Love is putting together, the healing and stuff that she's put together is phenomenal. So just go look at it.
What's the name? What's the name?
Nora Love. She's my co-host on Broadcasting Alpha.
How can we join your mastermind classes?
What's that?
How can we join your mastermind class?
Send me an email
Oh.
to themastermindconnection@gmail.com. Or just send me any message on Broadcasting Alpha too. I'll get it and then I'll get you connected. We do incredible things there. Things that cannot be explained by Newtonian physics. Because we have figured out how to communicate with the unified field.
How often do you guys talk?
What?
Your mastermind class, like how often do you meet?
Well, we do that on Sundays at 11 o'clock here in Tucson. But we do it on Zoom. So I have people there from every part of the country, from Europe, South America. I had one guy that come every so often from Hong Kong. And they're from all over the world coming in and enjoy this.
AM or PM? Is it 11?
What's that?
Is it 11 in the morning?
9 in the morning.
Okay.
I'm sorry, 11. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, there's spiritual science that go very deeply into that. I get the emails of people saying the book changed their lives, so there's I can stop. Any other good questions?
Any other questions? Well, okay. Well, thank you, Aage. That was awesome.
Dip, 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 dip.